It was a busy day yesterday amid turbulence in the housing file within the Ford government. Premier Doug Ford and Housing Minister Steve Clark met with Federal Housing Minister Fraser at Queen's Park.
And Minister Fraser joins us now live in studio to talk more about this and, of course, the housing situation. Of course, significant issues, of course, countrywide, but of course, here in Ontario, Minister, we do have a significant, shortage of housing and an urgent need to sort of get it in there. So let's talk about the federal government's role in trying to get housing built here, because so much of it falls to the provinces and the municipalities as well. It's a complicated issue.
It is, but one of the things that I find, if I've learned one thing in 8 years as a member of Parliament, is when a person has a problem that they want solved, they don't want to hear you say that it's somebody else's problem to help them with. They want to know what you're going to do. I think we have a role to play when it comes to providing leadership on the housing file. There's certain things that we can control within federal policy levers, but of course, other levels of government and the private sector are involved as well. Part of the new approach that I hope to take in this portfolio is to not only focus on the areas of federal policy, but figure out how we can incentivize the kind of change we want to see at municipal levels and incentivize investments by developers that are actually going to allow more people to have a home. I don't think that's too much to ask in Canada, and to the extent that we can move the needle on this file, I know that we're going to be helping a lot of people.
Yeah.
And help is what people need. You have done some work, like you mentioned. You met with Premier Doug Ford and Steve Clark yesterday at Queen's Park. Let us in on a little bit of that conversation. What was said and what steps will be taken moving forward?
So one of the things I've been doing in this early phase of my tenure in this position is to make sure that we're having conversations with the different partners we need to work with. So I've been traveling across the country, meeting with premiers, with housing ministers, with municipal leaders, and I'm going to be meeting with Patrick Brown later today to understand how we can better coordinate the supports that we put in place. The focus yesterday was really on a couple of key areas where I think we can improve our coordination to help incentivize change at the municipal level to get cities building, but also how we can change the financial equation for the private sector, and I should say nonprofit developers and operators as well, who are actually going to be building housing that's become challenged given the financial environment that we're living in with higher interest rates. Whether that involves tax reform or low-cost financing options or supports to municipalities to encourage them to change the way that they permit houses more quickly. There's a number of solutions on the table, and to the extent we can work together across levels of government, we can achieve more progress, and I think that's what Canadians want to see from us.
Certainly, Minister, I'm sure you couldn't have expected that the timing of your visit with Steve Clark and Premier Ford, Minister Clark and Ford, it sort of came around this whole controversy that's blown up around the Greenbelt in the province here about the province, how involved the housing minister was in the land swaps, et cetera, et cetera. I wonder if that came up in the meeting yesterday, and I wonder how much the federal Liberal government aligns with or agrees with the provincial Ontario plan to remove some of that Greenbelt land and give it up to developers the way they have.
So we didn't specifically address the controversy that has been in the news, but my focus right now on the federal supports that we want to put in place is driven not by creating more sprawl in cities, but to try to densify and build livable communities. If we know that there are solutions when there are permits that could be issued that could have more people living close to where the services already exist, close to where amenities already exist, close to where transit already exists, it makes a lot of sense for us to be focusing our investments that are going to grow our cities, grow our communities that way. To the extent that we can work with different levels of government who have common goals of building more homes for people, whether that's in the rental market, whether that's starter homes so young people can actually see a vision for themselves owning a home one day, there is a lot of common ground to work with. I'll leave it to the provincial government to deal with whatever controversies they may be dealing with on a given day. And no question, someday there will be federal controversies that I'll expect to deal with myself. But in the meantime, regardless of what's going on, we have to work together. There is no one level of government, and not even government alone, can solve the scale of the challenge. So whatever might be going on in the background, we need to work with our partners to get this done.
I think a lot of people will be surprised to hear that the Greenbelt controversy wasn't discussed at all, especially considering it is a key part of the Ford government's plans for development. So if you didn't talk about the Greenbelt controversy, what can you say about Ontario's plans? Are they viable in your opinion?
It's hard for me to say what's going to be viable. I kind of trust putting the rules in place to let the market do its work. My view is that we should be focused on growing cities, as I mentioned, in a way that densifies supplies and provides housing close to where services exist. Different people have different points of view on that. We did discuss Highway 413, which is sort of parallel issue on some of this, but we're going to maintain a predictable federal process to consider the environmental impacts as is required given the nature of the project, as may be required given the nature of the project. But in the meantime, my real focus here is to figure out what tools can we put on the table. What can we do to help the City of Toronto issue permits more quickly? What can we do to help developers get those projects going that have been put on pause? I do think there's a lot of areas for cooperation, and my focus, regardless of what's going on in the background, is going to be working with partners to build more homes for Canadians. It's that simple. Getting there is not simple, but agreeing on what needs to be done, I think, is something we can find common ground on.
The goal is to get more people in housing, that's for sure. Minister Fraser, thanks for joining us here on CP24 Breakfast.
Real
Appreciate
pleasure.
the conversation.
Thanks so much.